The iron shackles bit into Mira's wrists as she stood under the sickly yellow lights of the underground hall, her bare feet cold against the concrete floor. Around her, the air reeked of sweat, fear, and something darker desperation masked as entertainment. She kept her eyes down, focusing on a crack in the floor, tracing its jagged path with her gaze. If she didn't look at them, maybe she could pretend this wasn't happening, that she wasn't standing on a raised platform like livestock, wearing nothing but a thin white slip that did little to hide the bruises mottling her ribs. Lot 17, the auctioneer's voice boomed through the warehouse, gravelly and disinterested. Female, 24 years old. Omega classification, though unverified. No pack affiliation. No bond marks. Clean bill of health mostly. Laughter rippled through the crowd of men gathered below. Mira's stomach twisted. She'd heard rumors about places like this, whispered in the dark corners of shelters and back alleys. Markets where desperate wolves sold their unwanted, where rogues and exiles were traded like currency. She never imagined she'd end up here. Starting bid at 5,000. A paddle rose in the back. Then another. Mira's breath came shallow, her chest tightening. The voices around her blurred into a cacophony of numbers, each one higher than the last, each one another link in the chain that would drag her from one nightmare into another. 30,000. 35. She risked a glance upward. The men bidding wore expensive suits, their eyes cold and calculating. Some leaned forward with predatory interest. Others looked bored, as if buying a person was as mundane as purchasing furniture. 40,000. A voice called from the left, a man with silver hair and a cruel smile. Mira recognized the look. She'd seen it before, 3 months ago, when her own pack had cast her out. When they'd called her broken, useless, a stain on their bloodline. The rejection had felt like dying. 50,000. Another paddle. Another stranger. Mira closed her eyes, her body trembling. She wanted to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. Guards flanked every exit, their arms crossed, their expressions blank. Even if she could break free of the shackles, she wouldn't make it 10 feet. 75,000. The auctioneer's grin widened. Now we're talking. Do I hear 80? Silence. Mira's heart hammered. 75,000. Sold to the man with silver hair and dead eyes. She could already feel his hands on her, cold and unforgiving. Could already hear the door locking behind her, sealing her fate. 80,000. A voice said from the back of the room. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling through the space. Mira's eyes snapped open, searching for the source. He stood in the shadows near the entrance, half hidden by the dim lighting, tall, broad-shouldered. His presence seemed to fill the entire room, commanding attention without effort. Even, from a distance, she could feel something radiating from him, power, ancient and unyielding. The auctioneer hesitated, his grin faltering. 80,000 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 100,000? The silver-haired man's voice was sharp, irritated. The stranger in the shadows stepped forward, and the crowd parted like water. Mira's breath caught. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate. His face remained partially obscured, but she caught glimpses of a strong jaw, dark hair that fell just past his collar, eyes that gleamed like molten gold in the low light. 200,000, he said, his voice low and steady. It wasn't loud, but it carried, reverberating through the space like a physical force. The room fell silent. The auctioneer stammered. 200,000. Do I hear 300,000? The silver-haired man's face had gone red, his hands clenched into fists. The stranger tilted his head slightly, his gaze never leaving the platform, never leaving her. 500,000, he said simply. Gasps erupted. Even the guards straightened, their expressions shifting from bored to shocked. The silver-haired man sputtered, his mouth opening and closing. Finally, he threw his paddle down and stormed toward the exit, muttering curses under his breath. 500,000, the auctioneer repeated, his voice shaking. Going once, going twice. No one else moved. No one dared. Sold. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through Mira's bones. She didn't remember being led off the platform, didn't remember the shackles being removed, or the heavy coat draped over her shoulders, warm and smelling of pine and smoke. She came back to herself standing in a narrow hallway, the stranger from the auction looming before her. Up close, he was even more imposing. Easily 6'4", with a frame built from violence and survival. His eyes, those impossible golden eyes, studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink back. But she didn't. She'd learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. "You paid $500,000, Mira said, her voice hoarse. "Why?" His expression didn't change. "Does it matter?" "Yes." A muscle in his jaw ticked. "You're free to go." Mira blinked. "What?" "You heard me." He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope, pressing it into her hands. "Enough for a fresh start. New identity, travel funds, whatever you need. There are no strings, no debt." She stared at the envelope, her mind struggling to process his words. "I don't understand. You just spent— I know what I spent." His voice was rough, edged with something she couldn't name. "And I'm telling you that you don't owe me anything. Walk away. Disappear. Live." Mira looked up at him, searching his face for the lie, for the trap. But all she found was exhaustion. Pain. The kind that lived deep in the bones, the kind that didn't fade. "Who are you?" she whispered. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or longing. Then it was gone, buried beneath stone. "No one you should know," he said, and turned to leave. But Mira's hand shot out, catching his wrist. The contact sent a jolt through her. Electric and terrifying and impossibly right. He froze, stared at where her fingers touched his skin, and Mira knew, with sudden horrifying clarity, that walking away would be impossible. He wrenched his arm away as if her touch had burned him, stumbling back 2 steps. His chest heaved, eyes wide with something that looked dangerously close to panic. Mira's hand hung suspended in the air between them, still tingling from the contact. That jolt, it hadn't been static electricity or imagination. It had felt like recognition, like her body knew him even though her mind swore they'd never met. "Don't," he said, his voice raw. "Don't touch me again." The words should have stung, but Mira was too, focused on the way his hands trembled at his sides. The way his jaw clenched so hard she thought his teeth might crack. He wasn't angry. He was terrified. "Why did you really buy me?" she asked again, stepping closer despite his warning. "I told you. You're lying." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "People don't spend $500,000 out of charity, especially not in a place like that." His eyes flashed, gold bleeding into the irises until they practically glowed in the dim hallway light. Mira's breath caught. She'd seen eyes change color before all wolves' eyes did when their beasts rose close to the surface. But never like this. Never so bright, so powerful, that the air itself seemed to thrum with energy. "You should go," he said through gritted teeth. "While you still can. I have nowhere to go." The admission tasted bitter. "My pack rejected me. I have no family, no friends, no money except what you just gave me. So forgive me if I'm a little suspicious of the mysterious stranger who just bought my freedom." Something cracked in his expression, a hairline fracture in his carefully constructed walls. "Your pack rejected you?" 3 months ago." Mira crossed her arms, holding the coat tighter around herself. "Said I was defective, that I'd never shift properly, never be useful. They—" Her voice caught. She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "They said I was a waste of resources." His hands curled into fists. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "They're wrong. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He turned away, staring at the wall as if it held answers. "Because I can smell what you are." Mira froze. "What I am?" "Your scent." He said it like a confession, like something he shouldn't admit. "It's complicated. Try me." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. After tonight, I'd believe just about anything." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then slowly, he turned back, to face her. "You're not defective. Your pack was too ignorant to recognize what they had. You're an Omega, yes, but not like the others. Your bloodline," he stopped abruptly, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're in danger here. The men at that auction, they'll come looking. They always do when someone outbids them by that much. Then why did you?" "Because," he dragged a hand through his dark hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. "Because I couldn't let them have you." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to unpack. Mira studied him in the flickering fluorescent light. He wore all black tactical pants, a fitted shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, boots made for running or fighting. Everything about him screamed danger, from his coiled posture to the predatory way he held himself. But his eyes, beneath the gold and the fear, she saw something else. Loneliness. The kind that hollowed you, out from the inside. "What's your name?" she asked softly. His jaw worked. "Cale. Cale," she repeated, tasting the syllables. Something about it felt familiar, though she couldn't say why. "I'm Mira. I know." How? They announced it during the auction. But the way he said it, the slight hesitation, made her think he'd known before then. A door slammed somewhere in the building, followed by raised voices. Cale's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body going rigid. "We need to move," he said. "Now." "Where?" "Where?" "Anywhere but here." He shrugged out of his leather jacket and held it out to her. "Put this on." "The coat's too distinctive." Mira slipped into the jacket, which swallowed her smaller frame. It smelled like him, pine, smoke, and something wild she couldn't name. Something that made her wolf, dormant and broken as it was, stir for the first time in months. Cale led her down the hallway at a brisk pace, his hand hovering near the small of her back without quite touching. They descended a fire escape, the metal steps rattling under their combined weight. The night air hit Mira's face, cold and sharp, cutting through the fog that had settled over her mind since the auction. They emerged into an alley behind the warehouse. A sleek black motorcycle waited in the shadows, chrome gleaming under the single streetlight. "You can't be serious," Mira said. "Would you prefer to walk?" Cale swung his leg over the bike, then glanced back at her expectantly. Mira hesitated. Getting on that bike meant trusting him, meant putting her life in the hands of a stranger who'd just spent an obscene amount of money on her for reasons he refused to explain. But the voices from inside were getting closer, and something in her chest, something she'd thought died when her pack cast her out, was pulling her toward him. Insistent, undeniable. She climbed on behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist. The moment she pressed against his back, he went absolutely still. She felt his sharp intake of breath, felt the tension coiling through his muscles. "Hold on tight," he said roughly. The engine roared to life, and they shot into the night. Mira pressed her face against his shoulder, her heart racing. She didn't know where they were going, didn't know if she was fleeing one prison for another, but as the wind whipped through her hair and the city lights blurred into streaks of color, she felt something she hadn't felt in months, alive. They rode for what felt like hours, the city gradually giving way to dark countryside. Mira's arms ached from holding on, her thighs burning from gripping the bike, but she didn't loosen her hold. Something told her that letting go of Cale even for a moment would be a mistake. The motorcycle finally slowed, turning onto a narrow dirt road barely visible between towering pines. Branches scraped overhead, creating a tunnel of darkness that seemed to swallow them whole. When they emerged, a cabin materialized from the shadows, small, isolated, surrounded by dense forest on all sides. Cale killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the whisper of wind through leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Mira climbed off the bike on shaky legs, her body stiff from the ride. Cale remained seated for a moment, his hands still gripping the handlebars, knuckles white. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere they won't find you." He finally dismounted, his movements careful, controlled, like he was holding himself back from something. "It's warded, protected. As long as you stay within the boundary markers, you're safe." "Warded?" Mira frowned. "I thought that was just old pack magic. Fairy tales. Some fairy tales are real." Cale walked toward the cabin, pulling a key from his pocket. The dangerous ones usually are. The interior was sparse but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchenette, a door leading to what looked like a bedroom and bathroom. Everything was dark wood, and minimal furniture. Functional rather than comfortable, it felt like a place someone stayed when they didn't want to be found. Cale moved through the space with practiced ease, lighting lamps, checking windows. Mira stood in the center of the room, still wrapped in his jacket, feeling like an intruder. "There's food in the pantry," he said without looking at her. Canned goods mostly, but enough to last a few weeks. Fresh water from the well outside. Firewood stacked on the porch. "A few weeks?" Mira's stomach dropped. "You're leaving me here?" "It's safer this way." "Safer for who?" She moved to block his path as he headed for the door. "You bought me, brought me to the middle of nowhere, and now you're just going to abandon me?" "I didn't buy you." His voice was sharp, eyes flashing gold again. "I freed you. There's a difference." Then why does it feel like I've just traded one cage for another? Kale's jaw clenched. He looked away, staring at the cold fireplace. Because you don't understand what you are, what you represent. Then explain it to me. Mira took a step closer, watching the way his shoulders tensed. You said my bloodline was complicated. You said I was in danger. Tell me why. No, why not? Because... He turned on her suddenly, and she stumbled back. He was so much larger up close, so much more imposing. But it wasn't his size that made her retreat. It was the raw anguish in his expression. Because knowing will only make things worse. The less you know, the safer you'll be. I'm tired of people deciding what's safe for me, Mira said, steadying herself. My pack decided I wasn't safe to keep around. Those men at the auction decided I was safe to sell. Now you're deciding what information is safe for me to have. When do I get to decide? Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe, or surprise. You don't know what you're asking. Try me. For a long moment, they stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. The air between them felt charged, electric. Mira could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the pine and smoke scent that clung to him, could feel that same inexplicable pull from the warehouse hallway. Finally, Kyle exhaled, the fight draining from his posture. Your scent, he said quietly. It's not like other Omegas. It's older, purer, like bloodlines from before the Great Division, when the packs were still united under the old laws. Mira's breath caught. The Great Division was ancient history over 2,000 years ago, when the wolf packs had splintered into separate territories, breaking the original covenant. Most wolves considered it mythology now. Stories told to pups to teach them about loyalty and tradition. That's impossible, she whispered. Those bloodlines are extinct. Apparently not. Kale's eyes met hers, burning with intensity. And that makes you either incredibly valuable or incredibly dangerous, depending on who finds you first. The men at the auction were betting on valuable. They'd have used you to strengthen their packs, forced bonds, breeding rights. His voice turned harsh. The silver-haired one runs a trafficking ring. He specializes in rare bloodlines. Mira's stomach turned. And you? What were you betting on? I wasn't betting on anything. Kale moved past her to the fireplace, kneeling to arrange kindling. His hands shook slightly as he worked. I was trying to stop them. Why? Why would you care about some broken Omega with a maybe special bloodline? He went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. Because I know what it's like to be hunted for what you are instead of who you are. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Mira watched the rigid line of his back, the careful way he kept his distance. What are you? She asked softly. Kale struck a match, the flame casting dancing shadows across his face. Someone who should have stayed away from you. But you didn't. No. He stared into the growing fire, his expression unreadable. I didn't. Mira wanted to push, to demand answers, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The adrenaline from the auction, the motorcycle ride, the revelations about her bloodline, all of it crashed over her at once. She swayed slightly, catching herself against the wall. Kale was beside her in an instant, his hand hovering near her elbow without touching. The bedroom's through there. Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. Will you be here? She asked. In the morning? His hesitation spoke volumes. Please, she whispered. Don't leave me alone again. Something broke in his expression just for a moment before he rebuilt his walls. I'll be here. It wasn't a promise, but it was enough. Mira woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. For a disorienting moment, she didn't remember where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the air too clean. Then memory crashed back the auction, Kale, the cabin in the woods, and she sat up abruptly, her heart hammering. Morning light filtered through gauze curtains, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. She was still wearing the thin slip from the auction, Kale's jacket draped over a chair by the door. Her body ached in a dozen places. Bruises from rough handling, blooming purple and yellow across her skin. She found clothes folded at the foot of the bed, soft cotton pants, an oversized sweater, thick socks, all clean, all her approximate size. Mira dressed quickly, wondering where he'd gotten them, wondering how long he'd been planning this. The main room was warmer than last night, fire crackling cheerfully in the hearth. Kale stood at the kitchen counter, his back to her, pouring coffee into two mismatched mugs. He'd changed clothes, 2 dark jeans and a thermal shirt that clung to his frame. His hair was damp, like he'd showered. "You stayed," Mira said softly. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. "I said I would." "People say a lot of things. I'm not most people." He held out a mug without looking at her. "It's black. I don't have milk or sugar." Mira crossed the room, accepting the coffee. Their fingers didn't touch, but she noticed the way he angled his body away from her, maintaining careful distance, like proximity was painful. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "I don't sleep much." He moved to the window, staring out at the forest. Even in daylight, the trees were dense, oppressive, nothing but green and shadow for miles. Mira sipped her coffee, studying him in the morning light. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. Tension carved into every line of his posture. But there was something else, too. A guardedness that went beyond simple wariness. "How long have you owned this place?" she asked. "I don't own it. It belongs to someone I used to know." "Used to?" "They're gone now." His voice went flat, emotionless. The kind of tone people used when the grief was too big to touch. "I maintain it, keep it stocked, just in case." "In case of what?" "In case someone needs to disappear." KL finally turned to face her, leaning against the windowsill. "Which you do. The men from the auction won't stop looking, and when they realize I'm the one who interfered, they'll come looking for me too." Mira's chest tightened. "I've put you in danger. You haven't done anything. This is..." He stopped, jaw clenching. "This is my choice." "Why?" She set down her mug, taking a tentative step toward him. "Why risk yourself for a stranger?" "You're not." He cut himself off, looking away sharply. "You need to understand something. The world you knew, the pack dynamics, the hierarchies, all of that is surface level. Underneath, there's something older. Something most wolves have forgotten. The old laws," Mira said, remembering his words from last night. "Yes." Kale's eyes met hers, burning with intensity. Before the Great Division, wolves didn't choose their mates based on pack, politics, or strength. They were bound by fate, by something deeper than choice. Mira's pulse quickened. Fate bonds. I thought those were myths. They were real. They still are, for some bloodlines. He pushed off from the window, pacing like a caged animal. When two wolves are fated, their souls recognize each other. It doesn't matter if they've never met. Doesn't matter if they're from different packs, different territories. The bond exists before they do. And my bloodline. Your bloodline carries the markers for true fate bonding. That's why you're valuable. That's why they want you. Kale stopped pacing, his hands curling into fists. A forced bond with someone like you could give an alpha unprecedented power. Access to the old magic. Legitimacy. Mira's mind reeled. But I can't even shift properly. I'm broken. You're not broken. His voice was sharp, almost angry. Your wolf is dormant because it's waiting. Waiting for what? The silence stretched between them, heavy, with unspoken truth. Kale's expression was tortured, like he was fighting against something inside himself. For the right catalyst, he finally said. For safety. He shook his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you hidden until we can figure out what to do. We? Mira moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. You keep saying that like you're planning to stay. I can't stay. But he didn't move away when she approached. Didn't step back when she came within arm's reach. Being near you it's complicated. You keep saying that. Complicated how? Kale's eyes flashed gold, his breathing changing. Do you feel it? He asked roughly. When we're close like this? Mira nodded slowly. That pull, that electric current, it was stronger now, humming beneath her skin, like her body was trying to close the distance between them without permission. That's the problem, Kale said. That pull, it gets stronger the longer we're together. And if it gets too strong, if either of us gives into it. What? Mira whispered. What happens? The bond completes, and neither of us will be able to walk away. The words hit Mira like a physical blow. You think I know we are. His voice cracked. I knew the moment you touched me in that hallway, your scent, the way my wolf responded. He dragged a hand through his hair, looking wrecked. That's why I tried to give you the money and leave. Why I shouldn't have brought you here. Being alone with you, in close quarters, it's dangerous, Mira finished. Yes, but neither of them moved. Neither of them created distance. Maybe, Mira said softly, her heart thundering. I'm tired of safe. Kale's eyes widened, something like hope and terror warring in his expression. Mira. A sound outside made them both freeze, the sharp crack of a branch breaking, too loud to be an animal. Kale's entire demeanor changed, his body coiling with lethal readiness. Get in the bedroom, he said, quietly. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. What, now? The command in his voice was absolute, undeniable. And Mira ran. Mira pressed her back against the bedroom door, her heart slamming against her ribs. Through the thick wood, she could hear nothing, no footsteps, no voices, no sign of Kyle. The silence was worse than any sound. Her hands shook as she twisted the lock, the quiet click unnaturally loud. She scanned the room for anything she could use as a weapon. A lamp, a wooden chair, nothing that would stop a determined wolf. Minutes crawled by like hours. Mira strained to hear anything from the main room, but the cabin remained eerily quiet. She moved to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain's edge. 3 figures moved through the trees, large, purposeful, circling the cabin like predators cornering prey. Even from a distance, she could see they weren't trying to hide. They wanted to be seen. The door handle rattled suddenly, making Mira jump back. It's me, Kale's voice came through, tight with tension. Open the door. She unlocked it with trembling fingers. Kale slipped inside, closing and relocking it behind him. His eyes were fully gold now, no trace of human color remaining. His breathing was controlled, but she could see the barely contained violence in the set of his jaw. How many? She whispered. 3 that I can see, probably more in the outer perimeter. He moved to the window, his gaze tracking the figures. They're testing the wards, looking for weaknesses. Will the wards hold? Against ordinary wolves? Yes. His expression darkened. But these aren't ordinary wolves. They're trained hunters, mercenaries. Mira's blood ran cold. From the auction? No. Worse. Kale turned to face her. And for the first time, she saw real fear in his eyes. They're from the Northern Territories. The High Council's enforcers. The High Council. Mira had heard whispers about them, the governing body that supposedly maintained order between the scattered packs, settling disputes and enforcing the ancient laws. But she'd never seen one of their enforcers. Most wolves went their entire lives without encountering them. Why would they be here? She asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. Because someone reported a violation. Kale's hands clenched at his sides. Probably the auction house owner, covering his own tracks. He'll claim I stole property, disrupted legal trade. I'm not property. They don't care. His voice was bitter. To them, you're an unregistered Omega with a rare bloodline. I'm an unmated Alpha who interfered with a sanctioned auction. In their eyes, we're both criminals. A loud knock echoed through the cabin, sharp and authoritative. Kale Thorne? A male voice called from outside, cold and formal. We know you're in there. Come out peacefully and we can discuss this civilly. Kale's jaw clenched at the sound of his full name. Mira filed it away, Thorne, but there was no time to think about it now. What do we do? She whispered. You stay here. Stay quiet. He moved toward the door, but Mira grabbed his arm. The contact sent that now familiar jolt through both of them. Kyle sucked in a sharp breath, his eyes squeezing shut like he was in pain. Don't go out there, Mira said. If they're enforcers, they won't just talk. They'll take you. If I don't go, they'll break through the wards. And then they'll take both of us. He gently extracted his arm from her grip, the loss of contact making her chest ache. I can handle the council. I've dealt with them before. Something in his tone made her pause. Before? But he was already moving, unlocking the bedroom door. No matter what you hear, don't come out. Promise me. Kyle. Promise me, Mira. The desperation in his voice made her nod, even though every instinct screamed at her not to let him face this alone. He disappeared into the main room, and she heard the front door open. Gentlemen, Kale's voice carried through the cabin, colder than she'd heard it. This is private property. You're trespassing. We're operating under council authority. The enforcer's voice was smug. We don't need permission. The council's jurisdiction ends at territory borders. This land is, we know exactly where we are, Alpha. The word was mocking. And we know who you are. Kyle Thorne, exiled from the Western Summit Pack 5 years ago. Stripped of rank and territory for what was it again? Ah yes, refusing a council-mandated bond. Mira's breath caught. Exiled, stripped of rank. Kale had been punished by the same council that now hunted them. That's ancient history, Kale said. But his voice had lost some of its edge. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've just committed the same offense. Interfering with a sanctioned mate auction, stealing an omega with a verified rare bloodline, bringing her to an unsanctioned location without registration or oversight. The enforcer's voice grew harder. The council takes a dim view of repeat offenders, Thorn. I didn't steal anyone. I paid for her freedom. You paid to remove her from proper channels. That's trafficking by definition. A pause. Step aside. We're taking the girl into protective custody. No. That wasn't a request. Mira heard movement fast, violent. The sound of impact. A grunt of pain. She pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to run out there. You really want to do this? Kale's voice was deadly quiet now. You want to force this? 3 against 1, Thorn. Even you can't. The sound that erupted from the main room was unlike anything Mira had ever heard. Not quite a growl, not quite a roar, something deeper, more primal. It resonated in her bones, triggered something ancient and sleeping in her blood. Her dormant wolf stirred. The sensation was shocking, painful, like a limb that had fallen asleep suddenly flooding with sensation. Mira gasped, doubling over as her wolf clawed toward consciousness for the first time in 3 months. Outside, the enforcers were shouting. More sounds of violence, furniture breaking, walls shaking, and then another sound cut through the chaos. A howl. But not from Kale, not from the enforcers, from her. The bedroom door shook on its hinges as something inside Mira broke free. Her wolf, dormant and damaged, was waking, and it was terrified, furious, desperate to reach the one person who made it feel safe. Her vision blurred, bones beginning to shift and crack. The transformation was happening whether she wanted it or not. Pain. It started in her spine, radiating outward like lightning through her nervous system. Mira collapsed to her knees, gasping as her body betrayed her, bones shifting in ways they'd never managed before. Her wolf, silent and dormant for so long, was clawing its way to the surface with desperate urgency. Not now. Please, not now. But her wolf didn't listen. It never had. That was why her pack had called her broken. Her shifts had always been incomplete, agonizing, leaving her trapped between forms until exhaustion forced her body back to human. The pain without the transformation, the curse without the gift. This felt different. Her fingers elongated, nails sharpening into claws that dug into the wooden floorboards. Her jaw ached, teeth lengthening, but instead of the usual stuttering halt, her body kept changing. Her wolf was fighting through years of suppression, of rejection, of being told it wasn't good enough. Through the haze of transformation, she heard the fight in the main room intensifying, the crash of bodies against walls, snarls and growls that made her instincts scream. Kale, his name in her mind was like an anchor. Her wolf latched onto it, using it to pull herself fully into consciousness. And for the first time in Mira's life, the transformation completed. She stood on 4 legs, smaller than most wolves but fully formed. Silver-white fur covered her body, unusual for her coloring. Her senses exploded. She could smell everything now. The pine trees outside, the blood in the main room, the 3 enforcers, their scents sharp with aggression, and Kale. His scent was overwhelming smoke and pine and something wild that called to every fiber of her being. But underneath it, she smelled pain, injury. The bedroom door stood between them. Mira didn't think. She lunged, her smaller body hitting the wood with surprising force. The door splintered but held. She backed up and tried again, throwing her full weight against it. The lock gave way and the door burst open. The scene in the main room froze. Kale stood in the center, halfway through his own transformation, more beast than man. His clothes torn, his body caught between forms. Blood dripped from a gash above his eye. 2 enforcers lay unconscious on the floor. The 3rd stood near the door, his own wolf barely contained beneath his skin, eyes wide with shock. At Mira. Impossible. The enforcer breathed. She's... Kale's head whipped toward her, his golden eyes going wide. For a moment, something like awe crossed his partially transformed face, then terror. Mira, no. The enforcer moved, lunging toward her with inhuman speed. But Kale was faster. He intercepted, his massive form colliding with the enforcer in midair. They crashed into the wall hard enough to crack the wood. Mira's instincts took over. Her wolf recognized a threat to them, and she wasn't running anymore. She darted forward, smaller and faster than the larger males, and sank her teeth into the enforcer's leg. He howled, trying to shake her off, but her jaw locked tight. The taste of blood filled her mouth, bitter and wrong. Not pack, not friend, enemy. Kale used the distraction to land a devastating blow to the enforcer's temple. The man crumpled, unconscious before he hit the ground. Silence fell over the cabin, broken only by their heavy breathing. Kale staggered back, his body shuddering as he forced himself back to human form. The transformation was smoother than hers had been, practiced. Within moments, he stood on 2 legs again, chest heaving, covered in sweat and blood. His eyes found hers, and the raw emotion there stole her breath. "You shifted," he said hoarsely. "Mira, you fully shifted." She tried to respond, but her wolf form couldn't form words. She'd never learned how most wolves could communicate telepathically when shifted, but she'd never completed enough transformations to develop the skill. "Try to shift back," Kale said gently, moving slowly toward her like she might bolt. "Focus on your human form. Picture yourself as you were." Mira tried, but her wolf resisted. After years of being suppressed, it didn't want to go back into hiding. She whined, frustrated, frightened by her own inability to control this. "It's okay," Kale murmured, dropping to his knees a few feet away. "You're okay. Your wolf is strong, stronger than anyone," realized, "but you need to learn to work with her, not against her." He held out his hand, palm up, non-threatening. "Trust me," he said softly. Mira's wolf studied him, this male who smelled like safety and home and something she'd never had before. Slowly, carefully, she patted forward until her nose touched his palm. The contact sent a shockwave through both of them. Kale gasped, his eyes squeezing shut. "Gods, Mira, your wolf, she's magnificent." Warmth flooded through her at the words. "Not broken, not defective. Magnificent." "Now," Kale said, his voice strained, "picture your human hands touching mine. Picture your human voice speaking my name. Picture yourself as you want to be." Mira closed her eyes, strange, to have wolf eyes that closed differently and focused, not on forcing the change, but on accepting it, on trusting her body to know what to do. The shift back was slower, gentler than the transformation into wolf form. Her bones realigned with less pain, her muscles reforming with a fluidity she'd never experienced. When she opened her eyes again, she was kneeling on the floor, human, naked except for Kyle's jacket that someone he must have had draped over her. Her hand was still pressed to his palm. "I shifted," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I actually shifted." Kale's thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch feather-light but burning. "Because your wolf felt safe enough to emerge. Because she knew I would protect you both." "The mate bond," Mira said, understanding flooding through her. "That's why. My wolf recognizes you. Yes." His jaw clenched, conflict warring in his expression, which makes everything infinitely more complicated. Around them, the 3 enforcers lay unconscious. Outside, the forest had gone eerily quiet. "They'll wake soon," Kale said, reluctantly pulling his hand away. "And when they do, they'll report back to the council. They saw your wolf. They know what you are now." "What am I?" Mira asked. "What did they see that made them react that way?" Kale stood, offering her his hand to help her up. "Your fur. Silver white. That's the color of the original bloodline. The first wolves, before the division. The moon marked," Mira breathed, remembering stories from childhood. "Yes." Kale's expression was grim. "And now everyone will be hunting you." They had maybe 20 minutes before the enforcers woke. Kale moved with efficient urgency, binding the unconscious men with heavy rope he retrieved from a storage closet. Mira watched from the doorway, now dressed in the clothes he'd provided earlier, her body still humming with residual energy from the transformation. "We need to leave," Kyle said, tightening the last knot. "Pack light. Only essentials." "Where will we go?" Mira's voice was steadier than she felt. "If the council knows what I am, they'll search everywhere." "Not everywhere." Kale straightened, his jaw set with determination. "There are places even the council won't go, old territories, protected by treaties they can't break." "What kind of treaties?" He hesitated, then met her eyes. The kind made by alphas who predate the council itself. Before Mira could respond, one of the enforcers groaned, consciousness returning faster than expected. Kale was on him immediately, pressing 2 fingers to a pressure point on his neck. The man's eyes rolled back, and he slumped again. "That won't hold him long," Kale muttered. "We're out of time." He grabbed a worn backpack from the closet, tossing in supplies, dried food, water bottles, a first aid kit, matches. His movements were practiced, like he'd done this before. How many times had he run? How many times had he started over? "Kale," Mira said softly. "What happened 5 years ago? What did the council do to you?" His hands stilled on the pack. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then slowly, he turned to face her. "They ordered me to bond with someone," he said quietly. "A political arrangement. Her pack was powerful. Mine needed allies. The council sanctioned it, made it mandatory. But you refused." "I refused." His eyes were haunted. "Because I could smell that she wasn't my fated mate. The bond would have been forced, artificial. It would have destroyed us both eventually." Mira stepped closer. What happened to her? She understood. She didn't want it either. She had someone she loved in her own pack. Kale's voice roughened. "But the council doesn't accept defiance. They stripped me of my alpha status, exiled me from my territory, scattered my pack to other regions. And her," he swallowed hard. "They forced the bond on her anyway, with someone else." "Gods," Mira whispered. "She died 2 years into the bond. Her wolf couldn't survive being tied to someone who wasn't her true mate." His hands clenched into fists. "The council called it natural causes. I called it murder." The pieces fell into place: his isolation, his fear of the bond between them, his desperate need to protect her while maintaining distance. He'd watched what happened when fate was ignored, when the old magic was twisted for politics and power. "Is that why you saved me?" Mira asked. "Because you saw yourself in me?" "I saved you because leaving you there would have been another death on my conscience." Kyle zipped the backpack closed with more force than necessary. "And because the moment I walked into that warehouse, my wolf recognized your scent, even before I saw you." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. "You knew," Mira said. "You knew we were fated mates before you ever bit on me." "Yes." He wouldn't look at her now. "And I should have walked away. Should have let someone else buy you, helped you escape afterward without getting involved. But His voice cracked. "I couldn't. My wolf wouldn't let me." Mira closed the distance between them, reaching for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away. The contact was electric, that invisible thread between them, pulling taut. "What are you so afraid of?" she asked gently. "Destroying you." The words came out broken. "Everyone I've tried to protect ends up hurt. My pack, scattered. The female who refused the council's bond, dead. My family." He stopped abruptly, pain flashing across his face. "Your family? Gone. Killed by the same council enforcers who are lying on that floor." His eyes finally met hers, blazing with old grief and new fury. "The council doesn't just punish defiance, Mira. They eradicate it, and everyone associated with it." Understanding crashed through her. "They killed your family because you wouldn't follow orders. They called it an unfortunate incident, a rogue attack that my family couldn't defend against." His laugh was bitter. "But I know what rogue attacks smell like. And those wolves carried council scent." Mira's chest tightened. He'd lost everything, his rank, his pack, his family, all because he'd chosen fate over politics. And now he was risking what little he had left to protect her. "You should have let them take me," she said, her throat tight. "You've already sacrificed enough." "No." The word was absolute. "I've spent 5 years running, hiding, surviving. I won't spend the rest of my life knowing I left my fated mate to the same fate that killed the last person who defied them. Even if it means they come after you again? Especially then." Kale's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. "Because you're not just some omega with a rare bloodline, Mira. You're mine, my fated mate, and I will burn the entire council to the ground before I let them touch you." The declaration should have frightened her. Instead, it made something deep inside her chest click into place. Her wolf rose to the surface, content and certain. "Then we run together," she said firmly. "No more protecting me by pushing me away. We're in this together, or not at all." Kale's expression shifted, something like hope breaking through the darkness. "You don't know what you're agreeing to. I know that my wolf chose you the moment she woke. I know that I feel safer with you than I ever did with my own pack. Mira pressed her palm over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her touch. And I know that I'm tired of being told what I can't handle. Behind them, another enforcer groaned. We need to go, Kale said, but he didn't move. Didn't release her. Then let's go, Mira said. Together. Finally, he nodded. They grabbed the pack and headed for the door, leaving the cabin and its unconscious prisoners behind. The hunt had truly begun. They ran through the forest as wolves. Mira's transformation came easier this time, her body remembering the path her wolf had carved through years of dormancy. The change rippled through her like water, natural and fluid, and when she landed on 4 paws beside Kale's massive dark form, she felt whole for the first time in her life. Stay close, Kale's voice echoed in her mind, startling her. The bond is strengthening. We can communicate now. How far do we need to go? Her own mental voice sounded strange, uncertain. Far enough that they lose our trail. Then farther still. His golden eyes met hers briefly. Can you keep pace? In answer, Mira bolted forward, her smaller frame built for speed rather than power. She heard Kale's surprised huff behind her before he surged forward, matching her stride. They ran for hours, deeper into wilderness that grew wilder with each mile. The trees became ancient, their trunks wider than cars, their branches creating a canopy so dense that daylight barely penetrated. The air tasted different here, older, heavier with magic that made Mira's fur stand on end. This place, she projected to Kyle. It feels different. Old territory, he confirmed, from before the division. Some of the original boundaries still hold power. They crossed a stream, the icy water washing away their scent. On the other side, Kale paused, his massive head lifting to scent the air. Mira waited, learning to read his body language, the tension in his shoulders when he sensed danger, the slight relaxation when he determined they were safe. We can rest soon, he said. There's a place not far from here. They continued at a slower pace, Mira's muscles beginning to burn with exertion. She'd never run this far in wolf form, had never been able to, but adrenaline and necessity pushed her forward, along with the steady presence of Kyle beside her. 20 minutes later, they emerged into a small clearing. A stone structure stood at its center. Not quite a building, more like an ancient shrine. Weathered pillars supported a partially collapsed roof, and strange symbols were carved into every surface. What is this place? Mira asked, shifting back to human form. Her body protested the change, exhausted, but she forced it through. Kale shifted beside her, immediately moving to drape his jacket over her shoulders. An old meeting ground, from when the first packs made their treaties. He was breathing hard, a thin sheen of sweat on his skin despite the cold. The magic here masks our presence. We'll be safe for a few hours. Mira sank onto a flat stone, her legs trembling. The transformations, the running, the constant fear, it was catching up with her. Kale crouched beside her, producing a water bottle from the backpack he'd somehow carried in wolf form. Drink, he ordered gently. She obeyed, the cool water soothing her raw throat. How do you know about all these places? The cabin, this shrine, the old territories? Kale settled beside her, maintaining a careful few inches of distance. After my exile, I spent years mapping the forgotten places. Anywhere the council's reach didn't extend. He gestured at the ruins around them. Most wolves have forgotten these sites exist. But the magic remembers. And it will hide us? From normal tracking, yes. From a determined council search, he paused. Maybe. For a while, Mira studied the symbols carved into the nearest pillar. They seemed to shift in her vision, never quite settling into a recognizable pattern. What do they mean? They're written in the old tongue, the language wolves spoke before we learned human speech. Kale traced one symbol with his finger, reverent. This one means sanctuary. This one, bond. This one, he stopped, his hand dropping. What does that one mean? Sacrifice. His voice was quiet. All bonds require sacrifice. That was the first law. The weight of his words settled over them. Mira thought about what he'd already sacrificed: his family, his pack, his position, what he was still sacrificing by protecting her. What will happen to the enforcers? She asked. The ones we left at the cabin? They'll report to the council. Describe your wolf, your coloring. Kale's jaw tightened. Within 24 hours, every pack in the territory will be looking for a silver-white wolf and the dog. Exiled alpha protecting her. We can't run forever. No. He turned to face her fully. That's why we're going to the Northern Summit. Mira's eyes widened. The Northern Summit? That's Kale. That's where the Alpha King resides. That's walking straight into the Council's stronghold. The Alpha King isn't Council. Kale's expression was grim. He's older than the Council, more powerful, and he owes me a debt. What kind of debt? The kind you don't refuse to honor. He stood, pacing to the edge of the clearing. If anyone can protect you from the Council, it's him. And if anyone knows what your bloodline truly means, it's him. Mira rose on shaky legs, following him. You're talking about Theron Blackwood. Kale nodded once. Theron Blackwood was legend the Alpha King who'd ruled the Northern Territories for over 2 centuries. Some said he was the last of the original Alphas, from before the division. Others claimed he was something else entirely, something older than wolves. Will he help us? Mira asked. I don't know. Kale's honesty was brutal. But he's the only one with enough power to stand against the Council. And he stopped, struggling with something. He what? He knew my father. Before the exile, before everything. Kale's voice roughened. My bloodline isn't as common as I let people believe. My family were guardians of the old ways. We kept the treaties, maintained the sacred sites, remembered the rituals most packs forgot. Pieces clicked into place. That's why the Council targeted them. They weren't just punishing you, they were eliminating knowledge. Yes, the single word carried years of pain. And now you've appeared, with the Moonmark bloodline that everyone thought extinct. You're living proof that the old ways aren't dead, that fate bonds still exist. I'm a threat to their power structure. You're more than a threat. Kale turned to her, his eyes blazing. You're a revolution waiting to happen. If the Pax knew that, fate bonds were still possible, that the old magic could be awakened. They'd question everything the Council has built. Exactly. He moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. That's why they'll never stop hunting you, and that's why we need an alpha powerful enough to make them think twice. Mira absorbed this, the full scope of her situation finally becoming clear. When do we leave for the Northern Summit? At nightfall. We'll travel as wolves, stay off the main routes. His hand lifted, hovering near her face before dropping. Are you strong enough? I'll have to be. They rested in the ruins as the afternoon sun filtered through the ancient canopy, painting the stone in shades of amber and gold. Kale kept watch near the perimeter while Mira dozed fitfully, her body demanding rest despite her mind's protests. She woke to find him sitting closer than before, his back against one of the pillars, eyes closed but posture alert. Even in rest, he was ready to fight. You should sleep, she said softly. I'll sleep when we reach the Northern Summit. His eyes opened, golden in the dying light. How are you feeling? Sore. Exhausted. Mira sat up, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. But alive. More alive than I've felt in years. Something shifted in Kale's expression, warmth breaking through his carefully maintained walls. Your wolf is adjusting well. Most who've been dormant that long struggle with the reconnection. Maybe she was just waiting for the right reason to emerge. Mira held his gaze. Or the right person. The air between them charged, that invisible thread pulling taut again. Kale's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists against his thighs. Mira, he said, his voice strained. You need to understand what's happening between us. The mate bond, it's not just attraction. It's a soul-deep recognition. And the closer we get, physically and emotionally, the harder it becomes to resist. Maybe. I don't want to resist. You should. But he didn't move away. Once the bond fully forms, there's no breaking it. You'll be tied to me for life. To my choices, my enemies, my fate. And you'll be tied to mine. Mira shifted closer, watching him tense. You keep acting like you're the only one with something to lose. You have everything to lose. His voice turned rough. You're moon-marked, Mira. Once the Pax learn what you are, you could unite them. Restore the old ways. You could change everything. I don't want to change everything. I just want... She stopped, surprised by the truth rising in her throat. I just want to stop running, to stop feeling broken, to be with someone who sees me, not what I represent. Kale's eyes closed, pain etching lines around his mouth. I see you. Gods, I see you. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Because I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. His eyes opened, blazing with raw honesty, even knowing that bonding with me makes... You a target, even knowing that my exile, my past, my enemies, all of it, becomes yours. I still want you. Mira's breath caught. Then take me. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She moved until she was kneeling in front of him, close enough to feel his breath on her face. You think I don't know the risks? I was sold at an auction, Kale, hunted by council enforcers. My own pack threw me away. The worst has already happened to me. Not yet. It hasn't. His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along her jaw without quite touching. You haven't watched the person you love die because of choices you made. You haven't felt a bond snap and known you're the reason for it. The woman the council forced into bonding, Mira said softly. You loved her. Not the way you're thinking. Kale's thumb finally made contact, brushing her cheekbone. She was my friend, my pack sister, and I couldn't save her from what the council did. That failure, his voice cracked. I can't survive that again. Not with you. Not with my true mate. The confession broke something open between them. Mira understood now his distance wasn't rejection. It was terror. He was so afraid of failing her, of losing her, that he'd been trying to protect her by staying away. You can't protect me from everything, she whispered. And you can't protect me from you. The bond is already forming, whether we accept it or not. I know. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, the contact sending sparks through her entire body. I feel it every time you're near. Every time you look at me. My wolf is going insane trying to complete the bond. Then let it. Mira's hands came up to frame his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. Stop fighting this. Stop fighting us. If I do, if we complete the bond, there's no going back. You'll be mine and I'll be yours, and the entire supernatural world will know it. Good. Her voice was steady, certain. Let them know. Let the council know. Let everyone know that the moon-marked Omega chose her own mate, and he chose her back. Kale's control shattered. His mouth crashed into hers, desperate and claiming. Mira gasped against his lips, her body igniting as 5 days of tension finally found release. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, climbing into his lap until there was no space between them. The kiss deepened, turned primal. She could feel his wolf rising, could feel her own responding, both beasts, recognizing what their humans were finally accepting. Mine, his wolf snarled in her mind. Yours, hers answered. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kale pressed his forehead to her shoulder. I'm going to fail you, he whispered against her skin. I'm going to make mistakes and put you in danger and I'll be there anyway. Mira's fingers threaded through his hair. Because that's what mates do. They face the danger together. He pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes, fully gold now, wolf and man merged. The council will come for us with everything they have. Then we'll fight them. Together. The Alpha King might refuse to help. Then we'll find another way. Together. I'm falling in love with you. The words were raw, unguarded. And it terrifies me. Mira smiled, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. Good. Because I'm already in love with you. And I'm not afraid anymore. Something in Kale's expression transformed the fear, giving way to fierce determination. Then we do this properly. We go to the Northern Summit. We secure the Alpha King's protection. And we complete the mate bond under the old laws. All of that sounds perfect except one thing. What? I'm not waiting until we reach the summit to kiss you again. His laugh was surprised. Genuine. I can work with that. As the sun set beyond the ruins, they held each other in the gathering darkness, two broken wolves who'd found their way home. Together, they traveled, through the night as wolves, their pace relentless but sustainable. The landscape shifted gradually, dense forest giving way to rocky terrain, then to the snow-dusted foothills of the northern mountains. The air grew colder, thinner, carrying scents Mira had never encountered before. How much farther? She asked through their bond, her paws aching despite her newfound strength. We're crossing into northern territory now, Kale replied. Stay alert. The Alpha King's patrols will detect us soon. As if summoned by his words, 3 massive wolves materialized from the shadows ahead. Each was easily twice Mira's size, their coats dark as midnight, eyes glowing with an eerie silver light. They moved with military precision, forming a barrier across the path. Kale shifted to human form immediately, standing naked and unbothered in the freezing air. I'm Kale Thorne, formerly of the Western Summit Pack. I request audience with Alpha King Theron Blackwood, the largest wolf, a female with a related, Scar across her muzzle studied him with unsettling intelligence. Then her gaze shifted to Mira, still in wolf form, and her lips pulled back in a silent snarl. Moonmark, a voice echoed in Mira's mind, cold and assessing. Not Kale's voice. This one was feminine, ancient. The council's bounty didn't mention that detail. There's a bounty? Mira's heart sank. Posted 3 hours ago. Dead or alive. The female wolf's mental voice carried dark amusement. You've certainly made an impression. Kale stepped partially in front of Mira, his posture protective. Which is exactly why I need to speak with the Alpha King. He's the only one who can. He knows you're here, the female interrupted. He's known since you crossed the river at dawn. The question is whether he'll grant you sanctuary or turn you over to the council. He owes me a blood debt. Debts can be paid in many ways. Exile. But the female wolf stepped aside, gesturing with her massive head. Shift, both of you. You'll be escorted to the summit house. Any aggression will be met with lethal force. Mira shifted back to human, immediately feeling the bite of cold air. One of the male patrol wolves shifted as well, tossing them both heavy cloaks without ceremony. They dressed quickly, then followed their escorts deeper into the mountains. The summit house appeared gradually through the mist, a fortress carved directly into the mountain itself. Stone towers rose toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Torches burned in windows like watching eyes, and the air thrummed with power so intense it made Mira's teeth ache. I've never seen anything like this, she whispered. The summit house has stood for over 3,000 years, Kale said quietly, long before the division. It was built by the first alphas, using magic that's been lost. They were led through massive doors into a great hall. The space was cavernous, lit by a fire pit in the center that burned without smoke. Wolves in both human and animal form moved throughout, their conversations dying as Mira passed. She felt their stares, heard their whispered recognition. Silver white fur. It's true. The Moonmark bloodline. What's she doing with Thorn? At the far end of the hall sat a throne made of twisted wood and bone, and in it sat the most imposing man Mira had ever seen. Theron Blackwood looked to be in his 40s, but his eyes held centuries. He was massive, taller even than Kale, built like a warrior who'd seen 1,000 battles. His hair fell in dark waves past his shoulders, threaded with silver that caught the firelight. But it was his presence that stole breath raw, absolute power that filled the entire space. Kyle Thorn, Theron's voice was deep, resonant. You've brought interesting problems to my doorstep. Kale bowed his head respectfully but didn't kneel. Alpha King, I invoke the blood debt you owe my father. Your father saved my life once, 2 centuries ago. Theron leaned forward, his gaze sharp. That debt was to him, not you. The debt passes through bloodlines. You know the old laws. I do. Theron's attention shifted to Mira, and she felt pinned by his stare. Come here, girl. Mira's instinct was to refuse, to stay near Kale. But something in the Alpha King's voice compelled obedience not through fear, but through sheer weight of authority. She walked forward until she stood at the base of his throne. Let me see your wolf, Theron commanded. My lord, Kale started forward, but guards materialized, blocking his path. Mira met the Alpha King's ancient eyes. I'm not a circus animal to perform on command. Shocked silence fell over the hall. Several wolves gasped. Even Kyle looked stunned. But Theron's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Good. You have spine. You'll need it. He rose from his throne, descending the steps until he stood before her. Up close, his power was overwhelming. But I'm not asking to be entertained. I'm asking because I need to verify what you are. The council is calling you a fraud, a pretender with dyed fur. I don't care what the council says. You should. They're mobilizing 3 packs to hunt you. Over 200 wolves, authorized to use lethal force. Theron's expression turned serious. If you're truly moonmarked, I can protect you. The old treaties forbid harming carriers of the original bloodline. But if you're not, then you'll hand her over, Kyle said bitterly. Then I'll have no grounds to refuse the council's demand. Theron's gaze never left Mira. So I ask again. Let me see your wolf. Mira glanced back at Kale. He nodded once, trust and fear warring in his expression. She took a breath and let the transformation flow through her. It came easier each time, her body remembering, her wolf eager. Within moments, she stood on 4 paws, her silver-white fur gleaming in the firelight. The hall erupted in whispers. Theron knelt, reaching out slowly, May I? Mira hesitated, then lowered her head in permission. His hand touched her fur, and power surged between them, ancient recognizing ancient. Gods, Theron breathed. It's real. You're real. He looked up at his assembled pack. The Moonmark bloodline has returned. The declaration rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. And somewhere in the distance, a howl rose, the sound of approaching danger. The Council's forces had found them. The howls multiplied, echoing through the mountains like a death knell. Mira shifted back to human form as chaos erupted in the Great Hall. Wolves rushed to defensive positions, weapons were drawn, and the air crackled with anticipation of violence. Theron remained calm, his hand raised to quiet his pack. How many? He asked the female wolf who'd escorted them earlier. At least 200, my lord. 3 packs united under council command. They've surrounded the mountain base. Her silver eyes gleamed. They're demanding we surrender the Moonmark and the exile, or they'll consider it an act of war. War. Theron's laugh was cold. The council throws that word around like they remember what it means. He turned to face his assembled wolves. By the old laws that predate the council by millennia, any wolf bearing the Moonmark is under the Alpha King's direct protection. To harm one is to violate the first covenant. The council claims those laws are void. A male voice called from the crowd. They say the old ways died with the division. The council can claim whatever they wish. Theron's voice carried absolute authority. But I am older than the council. I remember the first covenant, and I will not break it, regardless of their threats. Kale moved to Mira's side, pulling her close. You're risking your entire territory for us, he said to Theron. Why? The Alpha King's ancient eyes settled on them. Because if the Moonmark bloodline has truly returned, it changes everything. The council built their power on the lie, that fate bonds were extinct, that the old magic was dead. Her existence, he gestured to Mira, proves they've been lying for centuries. So I'm a political tool? Mira's voice was sharp. You're a revolution. Theron's expression softened slightly. Whether you want to be or not. But that's a conversation for later. Right now we have more immediate concerns. The doors to the Great Hall burst open. A council enforcer strode in, flanked by 2 guards. It was the silver-haired man from the auction, the one Kale had outbid. His smile was cruel as his eyes found Mira. Alpha King Theron, he said, with mock deference. I am Marcus Vance, council arbiter. I'm here to collect council property and a wanted criminal. There is no council property in my territory, Theron said mildly. And the only criminals I see are those who would violate the first covenant. Marcus's smile faltered. The council doesn't recognize. I don't care what the council recognizes. Theron descended from his throne with predatory grace. You're standing in my territory, threatening my guests, under laws that your council is too young to understand. Leave. Now. The packs outside won't leave without the girl. Then they'll die on my mountain. Theron's voice dropped to a lethal purr. Because I've been alive for 3 centuries, Arbiter. I've fought in wars your council hasn't even heard of. And I've killed better wolves than you for far less offensive transgressions. Marcus paled but held his ground. This will mean war between the Northern Summit and the council. Are you willing to sacrifice your pack for one girl? I'm willing to uphold the laws I swore to defend. Theron glanced at his gathered wolves. Any who wish to leave may do so without consequence. But any who stay will fight. Not a single wolf moved. Marcus's face twisted with rage. You're making a mistake. The only mistake, Kale said, stepping forward, is thinking the Alpha King needs the council's permission to rule his own territory. His hand found Mira's, their fingers intertwining. And the only crime here is the council's continued suppression of the truth. What truth? Marcus spat. That fate bonds still exist. That the old magic isn't dead. Kale's eyes blazed gold. That Mira and I are proof. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face, followed by fury. You've bonded with her. Not yet. Kale's voice was steady. But we will. Here, tonight. Under the old laws, witnessed by the Alpha King himself. Mira's head whipped toward him. Kale, it's the only way. He turned to her, his expression fierce and tender. If we complete the bond under the Alpha King's protection, the first covenant applies to me too. The council can't touch either of us without violating ancient law. They'll find a way around it, Marcus snarled. Let them try. Theron's voice cut through the tension. I'll be very interested to see how the council explains attacking a fated mate pair under my protection. He looked at Kale and Mira. You understand what you're proposing? A bonding ceremony under the old laws is permanent, witnessed by magic itself. There's no divorce, no separation. Even death doesn't break it. I know. Kale's thumb brushed over Mira's knuckles. I've known since the moment I saw her. Mira's heart raced. This wasn't how she'd imagined it. Rushed. Under threat, with an army waiting outside. But looking into Kale's eyes, feeling the rightness of his hand in hers, she knew her answer. Do it, she said firmly. Bond us. Marcus lunged forward, but Theron moved faster than thought, his hand catching the Arbiter's throat. You're dismissed, the Alpha King said softly. Tell your council that the Northern Summit stands with the Moonmark. Tell them that any wolf who comes for her or her mate will face me personally. And tell them, his eyes flashed pure silver, that the old ways are returning, whether they're ready or not. He released Marcus, who released Marcus, stumbled backward, gasping. The Arbiter shot one last venomous look at Mira before fleeing the hall with his guards. In the silence that followed, Theron turned to his pack. Prepare the bonding circle. We have a ceremony to conduct. His smile was fierce. And then we have a war to win. Mira felt Kale's hand tighten around hers, felt their wolves singing in harmony beneath their skin. The revolution had begun, and they were at its center, together. The bonding circle was older than memory itself. Carved into the mountain peak behind the summit house, it sat beneath the open sky where moonlight could touch it directly. Ancient symbols lined the outer ring, the same markings Mira had seen at the ruins, now glowing with silver fire as wolves gathered around its perimeter. Mira stood at the circle's edge, wrapped in ceremonial robes of white fur that Theron's pack had provided. Her heart hammered as she watched Kale approach from the opposite side, similarly dressed, his dark hair loose around his shoulders. In the moonlight, he looked ethereal, dangerous, beautiful. Are you afraid? His voice whispered through their bond. Terrified, she answered honestly, and certain, both at once. His smile was soft, intimate despite the hundreds of witnesses surrounding them. That's exactly how I feel. Theron stood at the circle's center, moonlight making his silver-threaded hair glow like a crown. He'd changed into ancient ceremonial armor, leather and bone and metal that had been worn by Alpha Kings for millennia. By the First Covenant, Theron's voice carried across the mountain. We gather to witness the bonding of true mates. This is not a union of politics or convenience. This is fate made manifest, soul recognizing soul across time and distance. His eyes found Mira's. Enter the circle, Moonmark. Mira stepped forward, feeling the magic thrum through her bones as she crossed the boundary. Power surged, ancient and wild, recognizing what she carried in her blood. Enter the circle, guardian of the old ways. Kale moved to stand across from her, and the magic intensified, responding to both their bloodlines. Around them, the gathered wolves began to hum a low, rhythmic sound that vibrated through the air like the earth's heartbeat. Before the division, Theron continued, there was only one pack, one people, united by the moon, bound by fate, guided by magic older than stone. He gestured to Mira. The Moonmarked were the keepers of this magic. They could awaken dormant bonds, heal broken wolves, and unite packs through the power of recognition. Theron turned to Kale. The Guardians were the protectors of sacred knowledge. They remembered the rituals, maintained the treaties, and ensured the old ways were never forgotten. His expression grew somber. When the division came, both bloodlines were hunted, scattered, nearly destroyed. Because those who craved power knew that together, these bloodlines could challenge any authority built on lies. The implications settled over the crowd like snow. Mira understood now she and Kale weren't just mates. They were the living embodiment of everything the council feared: unity, truth, the old magic they'd tried to erase. The council will never stop hunting you, Theron said quietly, so only they could hear. But once this bond is complete, they'll be fighting against something bigger than politics. They'll be fighting fate itself. We're ready, Kale said, his eyes never leaving Mira's. Then speak your truth. Let the moon witness your bond. Kale stepped closer, taking both her hands. His touch sent sparks racing up her arms. I, Kale Thorne, last of the Guardian line, claim you as my fated mate. I offer you my protection, my loyalty, my heart, everything I am, and everything I'll ever be. Tears pricked Mira's eyes as she felt the weight of his words settle into her soul. I, Mira. She stopped, realizing she'd never known her true family name. Her pack had stripped, even that from her. Mira Moonwhisper, Theron said softly. That was your bloodline's name, before it was lost. Moonwhisper. It felt right, Like coming home. I, Mira Moonwhisper, last of the Moonmark line, claim you as my fated mate. Her voice grew stronger. I offer you my trust, my strength, my soul, everything I am and everything I'll become. The magic detonated. Silver light erupted from the circle, shooting skyward in a column visible for miles. Mira gasped as power flooded through her, not painful, but overwhelming. She felt Kale's presence in her mind solidify, felt their wolves merge into something stronger than either alone. Mine, his wolf growled, triumphant and tender. Ours, hers answered, and the distinction blurred his. Hers, theirs, one. The light slowly faded, leaving them standing closer than before, foreheads touching, breathing as one. Around them, the gathered wolves erupted in howls of celebration and acknowledgement. The bond is witnessed, Theron declared. Under moon and stone, by fate and choice. May any who would break it face the wrath of all who remember the old ways. Kale's hands cupped Mira's face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I can feel everything you feel, he whispered in wonder. Your fear, your joy, your love, it's all there, like you're inside me. You are inside me. Mira laughed, the sound watery but genuine. This is Kale. I've never felt so complete. His kiss was gentle at first, reverent, then deepened into something claiming and claimed simultaneously. The crowd's howls intensified, but Mira barely heard them. Her entire world had narrowed to this Kale's mouth on hers, their hearts beating in synchrony, the absolute rightness of their union. When they finally broke apart, Theron was grinning. The council's forces are retreating. It seems even they won't risk breaking a witnessed bond. His expression turned serious. But make no mistake, this is only the beginning. You've declared yourselves symbols of the old ways. Others will look to you, follow you. We never wanted. Mira started. I know. Theron's ancient eyes were kind, but fate rarely asks permission. The question is what you'll do with what you've been given. Kale's arm wrapped around Mira's waist, solid and sure. We'll face it together. That's all we can promise. That's enough. Theron stepped back. Welcome to the Northern Summit, both of you. You'll always have sanctuary here. Later, in the private chambers Theron had provided, Mira stood at the window watching the moon set. Behind her, she heard Kale enter, felt him through the bond before his arms wrapped around her from behind. No regrets? He murmured against her hair. Not a single one. She leaned back into his warmth. Although I do regret that my first shift happened during a crisis. I would have liked to explore being a wolf under less terrifying circumstances. His laugh rumbled through his chest into her back. We have time. Now. All the time in the world. Do we? Mira turned in his arms. The council. We'll have to accept that we exist. That fate bonds exist. That everything they've built on lies is crumbling. Kale's expression was fierce. And we'll face whatever comes. Together. Together. Mira echoed, feeling the words settle into her bones like a vow. Outside, the first rays of dawn painted the mountains gold. A new day. A new beginning. Mira had been rejected, sold, hunted. She'd been called broken, defective, worthless. But standing in the arms of her fated mate, the bond singing between them like music, she finally understood the truth. She had never been broken. She had simply been waiting for him, for this, for the moment when fate would lead her home. And now, finally, she was exactly where she belonged.